in our business and at our firm, it's all about preparation, preparation, preparation. We are advocates for our client. We speak for them. So as a part of that advocacy, it involves hiring the best experts. It's doing the legal research. It's doing the medical research. That is advocacy behind the scenes. It's not just the bells and whistles in front of the jury.
It's time for the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, presented by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst Attorneys at Law. We put it out there, the teams, the stats, the opinions, the picks, and most importantly, where to stop for dinner on the way to the game. Let's get to it. Here's your host, Andy Campbell.
Well, hello and welcome, football fans, to the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst Law Firm. With only 3 more weeks left in the regular season, we're discussing district championships and teams that need a win to stay in the playoff hunt with this panel of experts. We have Mark Rogers, Tom Nelson, Jacob Dieselhorst on as always. Our guest picker tonight is Doug Nelson. Doug is a Pond Creek Hunter graduate and has taught and coached at numerous schools in the state of Oklahoma, including Union and Lincoln Christian in Tulsa, who we'll be discussing later on in the show. But Doug, thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you on tonight.
I appreciate the opportunity, and of course, Adam, thank you for allowing me to get going with some Skordle opportunities. Not only Tournament of Champions, but also all-state volleyball this past summer.
We're going to discuss 8 network games tonight, 2 games of the week on the Skordle Network, and then 4 of the best out-of-network games in the state this week. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to kick off the show with an 8-man matchup in B5 as O'Keene takes the 4-hour bus trip to Boise City to take on the Wildcats. The Whippets are 6-1 on the season, with the only loss coming to number 1 ranked Sealing. The Wildcats are 5-2 on the year, but play the top 3 teams in that district over the next 3 weeks. Tom Nelson, kick us off.
Well, this one is all about playoff positioning in B2 District 1. Ringwood and Canton are both winless. They're out of the mix, which means that Sealing, O'Keene, Boise City, and Shattuck are going to make the playoffs. But getting one of those 2 top spots in a home game or 2 is what's on line in this ball game. Sealing has already beaten O'Keene and Shattuck, and that's Boise City next week. They're in the driver's seat. That leaves the number 2 spot up for grabs, and this is an elimination game for that, I think. Tanner Allen's Whippets are good. They're only lost to Sealing 2 weeks ago. I've heard they had a couple of transfers who are making an impact. Boise City hasn't beaten a team with a winning record, and 3 of their wins are over teams that are are currently 0-7, which means they're 0-21, those 3 teams. I think that O'Keene goes out to the Panhandle, makes pretty short work of the Wildcats.
Mark.
First of all, thank you, Andy, very much for pointing out the fact that I had my worst week ever. Skordle picks last week, 5-7. No phone calls, no social media postings. The 2 weeks I went 12-0. That's embarrassing. So I blame Jake for this. He wasn't here last week. And so
I wasn't going to say anything on the air, Mark, but
can't leave ever again. Oh my God. Those games, at least some of them were close. Some of them weren't. So we'll try to do better this week. I talked with Coach House a little bit today, head coach of Boise City. They've got a lot of young players. So this is a team that has some juniors, Ridge Arthod, Baylor Crabtree, Cash Desbian, and then a bunch of sophomores and freshmen. So they're really building. I think that this is their 2 losses are good losses to Tyrone and Turpin. Those are nothing to be ashamed of. So 5 wins for them is a good start and kind of building the program. I may just pick everything Tom picks this week. So I'm going to go with O'Keene also.
Let's go.
10-1, baby. 10-1.
Doug, let's go to you. O'Keene.
Yeah, road trips in the Panhandle are no joke, and I believe it's 518-mile round trip for the Whippets. That is nuts, Tom. I know you talked about growing up in Kansas that road trips really didn't matter out there, but I did look. The first time these guys played, I believe, was 1982, and O'Keene leads the series 1-0, and I'm hoping my stats are right. Somebody could fact check me if you need to. I remember one time at Balco, we drove 8 hours round trip to Garber for a scrimmage. So, these guys, it's no big deal. Just get on the Yellow Dog and head out. Boise City, they do have Sealing next week, so they might be overlooking O'Keene, in my opinion. Also Boise City beat Balco 14-8 this year. So for that reason, I'm going with the Whippets.
I'm guessing your stats are right because Boise City, I mean, O'Keene played 11 man for so long. They didn't cross
Yep.
paths with Boise City until this year, so
Yeah.
that's probably right.
Jacobs, go to you.
Yeah, so no common opponents between these two teams. They've both played other than Canton, that is, and obviously both teams rolled against Canton. Canton's 0-7, Ringwood's 0-7. This district is uh, you know a little top heavy or bottom heavy, depending on how you look at it. Uh, I think the Boise City being at home is going to be a factor in the game. But O'Keene has a potent offense, and they have shown the ability to hold some teams that can score points down. They held Pioneer to 16 points, Wacomas to 20 points, and so I think defense could be the difference in an 8-man game in this game. So I got O'Keene a 12.5 point favorite on the road going to Boise City, and I think they win the game 42-30.
All right, let's go from Class B to 3A1 with a big matchup between the Kingfisher Yellow Jackets and North Rock Creek Cougars on Friday. Kingfisher is 2-2 in district play and needs a big win to really solidify their playoff hopes. The Cougars have won 3 in a row after a loss to Heritage Hall, opening district play for North Rock Creek. Mark Rogers, give us a preview.
Making the playoffs in this district is not easy, fellas. It's not going to be easy at all. Big week for Caleb Hawkins. Every time I talk to my head coach from high school, Gary Higgins, who's on this staff at North Rock Creek, he's telling me about Caleb Hawkins and how good a player he is. I'm going to North Texas last week, 242 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns in the win over Purcell last week. So this game last year was a North Rock Creek win, which is kind of a little bit of a breakthrough for them. I think it was an opponent they knocked off that had handled them pretty easily in the years past. I think in 2022, Kingfisher won at 52-6, but North Rock Creek won 12-10. Kingfisher is a young team that is improving. They need this one to get in the playoffs, but I think Rock Creek's got a good chance to finish in the upper half of this, in the upper 2, and possibly get a home playoff game with Heritage Hall in here. So I'm going with North Rock Creek to defeat the Yellow Jackets.
Tom.
Yeah, North Rock Creek hasn't been around that long, but this program is making some waves this year. They come up on the show quite a bit. I don't know if you guys actually picked a game before I was on board the first couple of weeks, but we have been talking about them quite a bit. Those early wins over Marlow and Pauls Valley. They're gunning for a second playoff trip in their 5-year history. And with Plainview and Anadarko to finish the season, this is really a big one for them if they want to get positioned where they want to get to. It's also big for Kingfisher, but I think that North Rock Creek is going to come out on top of this one.
Doug.
Yeah, Kingfisher's still battling for 4th place in that district. Man, they've had a lot of changes, but they continue to make strides. I remember we played them a couple of years ago in the playoffs at Lincoln Christian. My heart goes with Coach Glover's Yellow Jackets. They've got an incredible basketball program. North Rock Creek, on the other hand, is a new program. I remember them coming when they had all freshmen and sophomore to play baseball at Lincoln Christian. They're now full-blown K through 12. It's a cool setting. They've got neat facilities outside of Shawnee. We've been there in a track meet situation. They've got a cool name with NRC. My heart is with Kingfisher, but I'm going to have to take NRC on this one.
Jacob.
This is pretty much winner, or make or break for them to make the playoffs. They've competed in all of their games, close losses at Pauls Valley, 43-40. They hung around Heritage Hall long enough to say that the game was competitive, even though Heritage Hall did pull away at the end. And they had a win over Purcell. They gutted out. Against those same opponents, similar results. Although I think Rock Creek's win at Pauls Valley last week in overtime, on the road, the fact that they were able to contain Pauls Valley's star running back enough that they could get a win, especially in an overtime format, tells me that North Rock Creek has gamers on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's what they're going to need this week. And I think it'll be enough. That and the home field advantage. I think Kingfisher's still, rebuilding and got some work to do. This is not going to be the night that they get over the top on that. I got North Rock Creek, 13.5 point favorite, and I have them winning the game 41-28.
You can watch that Kingfisher at North Rock Creek matchup for free, Skordle.tv or KingfisherSports.tv. I would just recommend that you mute the volume because no one really wants to listen to Michael Swisher anyway. Let's move on to pick'em game number 3. Chandler hosts a big game in 2A4 this week. Chandler currently sits second in that district with a 3-1 record in district play. The Lions will square off against Tulsa Central on Friday. Central 2-2 in the district and currently in 5th on the outside, looking in for the playoff picture. Mark, let's go to you.
Chandler scheduled tough. They lost to Clinton. They lost to Stroud, who's the number 1 team in their class, and so I think Chandler will bounce back and get to 5-3 and 3-1. You mentioned get to 4-1 in that district and put themselves in a chance to play in there behind Metro Christian.
Tom.
Well, Tulsa Central is a 500 program, 5-5 each of the last 2 seasons, a couple of 6-win seasons and a losing season over the past 5 years. They come in 3-5 with losses to a couple of good teams in Sequoia and Metro Christian. The Braves haven't made it to the playoffs since 2020. They need to win their next 3 to do that, I think. So you have to feel like they will be fired up for this one. Chandler's got a big game with Sperry next week for second in the district if they get by this week. And the Lions have a lot in front of them. And I think that they'll do all right. The next 3 are winnable for them. I think it starts this week. I'm going to take Chandler in this one.
Well, luckily, we have a Tulsa expert on the panel tonight. So, Doug, let's go to you. Central Tulsa at Chandler.
Yeah, Tom, you're right. The last time that Tulsa Central made the playoffs, they were eliminated by Lincoln Christian at Lincoln. That was 2020. They're still battling for that 4th spot. Chandler, Mark talked about, tough losses. Metro Christian, they played Clinton as well, lost those 2 games. But I will tell you this, their softball team was really, really good this year. They came to Lincoln and they made the state tournament, but their coach has incredible hair. He's got a long ponytail. Mark, you would love it. And I got to give them credit. They beat us in 8 innings, 1-0, but I'm going to take the Lions on this one.
Jacob, let's go to you.
Yeah, Chandler, they put a really tough, preseason schedule, non-conference schedule, toughened them up, got them ready for, 2A district play. After, losing to Metro Christian on the road, the last 2 weeks, they've their offense has really settled in, scored 69 points against Daniel Webster, and then went on the road to Westville last week and scored, 6 more touchdowns on route to a big win. Tulsa Central coming off, road losses, to the top of the district. Things don't get any easier going into Chandler this week for them. I got Chandler a 24-point favorite, and I think they win the game 42-14.
ChandlerLions.tv, Skordle.tv for that matchup. Let's go to pick'em game number 4. Good matchup in 3A3 on Friday as Lincoln Christian travels to Shakota to take on the Wildcats. Lincoln Christian 7-0 and has looked impressive all year with their closest game, 28-20 win over Heritage Hall earlier this season. Shakota is 5-2 overall after a tough 1-point loss to Holland Hall a week ago. Shakota, of course, featuring OU wide receiver commit Elijah Thomas, who is really fun to watch, worth the price of admission. Tom Nelson, let's start with you. Lincoln Christian at Shakota.
I'm going to start here by pumping up Shakota. I got a freshman quarterback. His name is Cole Rolland, averaging 231 yards passing a game, 20 touchdowns, 4 picks. They've got Jaden Ellen over 1,100 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns. Then Elijah Thomas, who's probably going to go over 1,000 yards receiving this week. He's like 50 away, 45 away, I believe. They had a 4-game winning streak snapped last week, losing to Holland Hall by 1 point. That said, the future is really bright at Shakota. But folks, this is the present. Number 1 Lincoln Christian coming to town. They played 7 times over the past 9 years. Lincoln Christian's won all 7 by an average score of 57-12. I feel pretty good about Lincoln Christian in this one.
Mark.
Give Zach Ross, the coach of Dakota, some credit. So they've scored this year 48, 49, 53, 68, 48, 31, 32. So their offense be able to put up some points, but this is a different test. The Lincoln Christian program is fantastic. They've got a good defense. So I think that will be a little bit of a challenge for Lincoln, just to say, hey, look, can we stop this offense that's elite? I think that they'll score a bunch of points on their end, though. So I like Lincoln Christian big in this one.
Let's go to our Lincoln Christian panel expert here. And Doug, first of all, give us your pick. But secondly, tell the people at home how they can watch this matchup, Lincoln Christian at Shakota.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm going to lean towards the Bulldogs in this one. And some of the stats you guys are throwing out are exactly correct. You can watch this on LCS Tulsa, our YouTube channel. And we'd love to have anybody tune in that would like to be a part of that. You can also go to our website, just at LCS Athletics, and you can pull that game up. We will be at Shakota. It's a great atmosphere. You're right on I-40. I don't know if you guys know this, but that intersection between Highway 69 and I-40, there's 20,000 cars that go by, and our press box a day, our press box right on I-40, and you can feel the wind blowing by your hair. It'll also take your papers away if you don't get some sort of paper clip to hold those things down. And it gets extremely cold there on the highway. But of course, Carrie Underwood, they talk about her nonstop over there. Tracy Scroggins played for Tulsa and the Detroit Lions. Those are the highlights of Shakota for sure. But the Dogs roll in there with Coach Ricky. The guy's just incredible. 86-13 in his 8 years at Lincoln Christian. Of course, he took over for Darren Melton. Darren came from Jinx and just started the program. I believe they talked about, having 22 guys out in 2002, and only 3 of them had ever had a helmet on their head. And so this thing has been grown from the ground up. It's just amazing, just year in and year out, the kids that they have in the program. I don't know, a lot of people don't know this, but 85% of our kids have been there since kindergarten. And so that's a big number. Coach Ricky's son, Carter, is the man. Carter took over for Luke Milligan, that now plays for Northeastern. Before Luke was Chase Ricky. Chase stands number 9 all time in passing in the state of Oklahoma. Of course, Mason Fine's number 1. Chase was up to number 7, but he's dropped a few spots. An interesting fact, 2 weeks ago against Locust Grove, Carter broke the school record, 419 yards in one game, 5 touchdowns. The next day at Emporia State versus Missouri Southern, Chase goes for 485, and he took over for Gunnar Gundy, who was out with illness up at Emporia. And so interesting, the Ricky boys, Friday night and Saturday went for 904 yards. So they had a pretty good run during that 2-day stretch. But this is a 4-headed monster. Kylan Schulteis, a big-time receiver, a senior. And then you've got Dawson Fullingham, a senior, that, these guys are putting out big numbers. And then you have Brendan Baker, who's also one of the coach's sons, and then a super freshman in CJ Wright, one of the fastest guys in the state. This young man is phenomenal. And so keep an eye on him. Combined, those guys have 1,062 yards and 17 touchdowns. Schulteis is a big-time receiver. And then we're led defensively by Mason Torres, who has 52 tackles, 5 interceptions on the year. And it's just fun to watch. Guys, I'm blessed to call the games. It's just a pleasure to be a part of it for 5 years. And every game, I'm just amazed at these kids. But is that enough about what we're doing over here? Thank you for having us, by the way, to be a part of this.
Doug, you have Whit Carter on the call with you?
Carter is not on the call, but
okay.
he is on not tonight, but during live streams. Absolutely. I thought maybe you meant you sat right next to me. No, he is not. He's
on
not
Friday
here tonight. But yes, on the call, Whit Carter is amazing. I've got some great guys, a color guy, Russell Claybrook. These guys are just really, really good. And so I just get to kind of drive the bus and let those guys do the work. But it is fun. So like I said, it's a pleasure to be a part of that. We do all football, basketball, we do baseball, some softball, and also volleyball.
Well, Whit has done a bunch of work for Skordle, has been on the show a couple of times, so
Yeah.
be sure to tell him hello for us. Jacob Beast-Horse, let's go to you. Lincoln Christian at Shakota.
Yeah, Lincoln Christian, on paper, just kind of doing these hypothetical matchups. If Lincoln Christian was playing Tuttle, I would have Lincoln Christian a favorite. If Lincoln Christian was playing Blanchard, I'd have Lincoln Christian a favorite. Using my formula, which isn't close to perfect by any means, but this team is a powerhouse, and Chakota's a team on the rise. They've found their way into the top 10 in 3A. It's a big accomplishment, unless Carrie Underwood has four little brothers that can run 4.5s. I don't think that's going to make a difference, though. And it's funny that Gunnar Gundy was out for illness from the game. I'm actually out for illness for the rest of the season watching OSU. After watching their defense get gashed in the fourth quarter, But with that said, as good as Shakota has played this season, they're going to have a long night Friday. I got Lincoln Christian on the road, a 34.5-point favorite, and I got them winning the game 49-7.
Jacob picking the Bulldogs for a big win.
Brahms is bringing the heat. Introducing Brahms new spicy chicken sandwiches. Flavor this good just can't be beat. Brahms crispy, tender, spicy chicken delivers just enough kick to ramp up our original recipe. Get it regular or club style with crispy bacon and American cheese. Add on Brahms sauce for that extra burst of heat, and you have spicy chicken sandwich perfection. Because nothing is better than Brahms.
Let's go to pick'em game number 5. Mangum Tigers 7-0, currently sit at the top of District A5. The Tigers face a tough test this Friday as they host the Texoma Goodwell Red Devils. Texoma dropped a tough game to Thomas 19-12 last week, but looks to rebound on the road at Mangum to keep their district title hopes alive. Mark Rogers, Texoma at Mangum.
If I caught a little bit of a Mangum game on Skordle a couple of weeks ago. They've got a great venue there. They've had really, really good crowds. I watched some of their game against Southwest Covenant and talked with Coach Powers there earlier today. They're averaging 46 a game. They're giving up 8. Austin Solis has already rushed for 1,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. Colton Gillespie, they got 650 in receptions. Defense is pretty good. Jake Green, Trey Williams are pretty good on the defensive line. They got 22 tackles for loss and 6 sacks combined. This one is another 200-miler, which Texoma will have to go through the state of Texas. So Mangum 7-0. I think they get to 8-0 and win this game.
Tom Nelson.
Coach Powers has been building this program for the last 5 years or so. It's really coming to fruition this year. They returned a lot of starters, but he's got almost 50 kids out for football at an A2 school, which is pretty impressive. They've lost in the first round of the playoffs each of the last 3 years, but they've got bigger goals this year, and they're wearing out the opposition. Like Mark said, average score of somewhere around 47-10. This week and next week at Thomas are huge because they finish with winless Carnegie, so they are that close to a perfect regular season, which would rekindle the memories of the 1998 team that made it all the way to the Class A state championship game. Texoma's going to have to slow down the Solis kid, over 1,000 yards rushing, 10 yards a carry, 17 touchdowns. I really think that Mangum can make a deep run, and they're going to show it this week with a win over Texoma.
Doug.
Yeah, 1998 was a long time ago, but also 1971, 53 years ago, was when the last championship for Texoma. Again, fact check me on that one, but I think that's correct. So that's a long time ago. I have great memories of going to Texoma and playing in the basketball games out there against the great Ron Murphy. They named their tournament after him. But as far as football, I was checking it out today. They got great helmets. They got great uniforms. That is a long ways, 214 miles to Mangum. Of course, Mangum's ranked number 2. Mark talked about how many points they've scored this year, 47 a game. Here's what I know about Mangum. My mom went to school at Berlin, which is 48 miles from Mangum, all-time great basketball player there. So with that said, I'm going with Mangum.
Jacob Beashorst.
Yeah, the A2, Thomas, Texoma, Mangum, Southwest Covenant, all these teams, pose problems for teams they play every week. And seeing Thomas pull off that win against Texoma last week that was an impressive win by Thomas. I see, and I have Mangum a peck ahead of Thomas in the power rankings right now in Class A2. This is going to be a really good football game. A lot on the line here, playoff seeding. Texoma is capable of winning this game, but like the panel said, they're going to have to find a way to control Mangum's offense, which so far 7 teams have been unable to do, and that's why they're 7-0, and that's why I have them an 11-point favorite at home against Texoma, and I see them winning this game 34-21.
Well, we're going to stay in District A5 for our next game. We mentioned Thomas Terriers already having a strong season, 6-1 record. Terriers travel to Yukon to take on the Southwest Covenant Patriots on Friday. The Patriots are on the outside looking in right now in terms of playoff positioning. After losing 3 of their last 4 games, we have a chance to get in if they can finish strong in the final 3. Thomas, Moreland, and Skordle coming up. Tom Nelson, start with you.
The Terriers had a gut check win last night at Texoma. They never trailed that game, but it was a 1-point game in the fourth quarter before they scored a final touchdown. What's up next for them is a pretty decent Southwest Covenant team playing its first year of 11-man football. They've lost 3 of their last 4 after a 3-0 start. Now, Thomas has a tradition of being a physical team. This year's no different. They posted 3 shutouts, and outside of a 34-33 loss to Apache a couple of weeks ago, they haven't given up more than 2 touchdowns in a game. They've got to guard against looking ahead to that big game against Mangum next week, but I think Thomas is going to wear down Southwest Covenant.
Mark?
I went against Thomas last week. It was a bad choice. One of my 7 losses. They're going to get to 7-1. Southwest Covenant has played good. Tough district for them to move up. Coach Jensen's done a nice job with this team. So I do think Thomas will win this one.
Doug?
Dan Bailey was their kicker at Southwest Covenant. I learned that today. The great Whit Carter came up with that one. Obviously kicked for OSU and Dallas Cowboys. Here's something else I know about Southwest Covenant. Heath Kufall used to be at Christian Heritage. Now he's the volleyball coach there and does a great job. I believe his daughter just won a state championship at Christian Heritage in volleyball. I do know that Bob Ward, I played college football with Bob at Southwestern back in the day. Bob wore number 80 and was a tough receiver. That guy could take shots and get right back up. He's been there 18 years. His record's 138-72, won a state championship. He's a tough guy, a great coach. He's had some sons play for him. And so for that reason, I'm going with Thomas.
Jacob?
Yeah, like I said before, Thomas's win last week really showed me something. Southwest Covenant, sitting at 4-3. Their playoff lives are on the line in a lot of ways, but going on the road to Thomas, Thomas has established itself as a perennial winner, and they're sitting pretty at 6-1 in the top 5 and A2. I have Thomas a 20-point favorite in this game, which might seem like a lot of points, but and I have them winning the game 30-14.
All right, let's start talking about our Skordle games of the week this week. Our first one is a good matchup, the game we've all been waiting for that will decide the district champion in 4A2. Blanchard and Tuttle are both 7-0 and playing really good football the entire year. Blanchard got the win in this game and eventually the 4A state championship a year ago, so I'm sure this is a game that Tuttle has had circled on their calendar for a long time now. Mark Rogers, Blanchard at Tuttle.
Whew, man. I believe it's the 11th time Jeff Craig and Brad Ballard have faced off. They are 5-5 against each other. Both these teams are perfect 7-0. Blanchard's won the last 2. In the last 12 meetings, 11 of the games have been decided by 14 points or less. That is one of the most competitive rivalries in all of Oklahoma high school football, any class. Both of these guys are state championship coaches. I know Coach Nelson knows a little bit about Brad Ballard that was there at Lincoln Christian for a while before he took the job at Tuttle. I have utmost respect for each of these guys. They're the best at what they do among their peers here in the state. So it's going to be a good game. Tuttle added some really good players in the offseason. Cruz Campbell is a very impressive quarterback that's a sophomore that played at Southmore last year. He's been throwing for a lot of yards, and he has got a loaded receiving class to throw to. Blanchard graduated some of the offensive line and defensive line players that helped them win these last 2 years, but it's going to be a great battle of skill players. Both teams can score. I think it will be a pretty high scoring affair, but I like Tuttle to get revenge for those last couple years' losses.
Tom.
Yeah, 2-4-0 teams, the top of 4-8-2, 2 games up on everybody else in the district. This is the district championship game. Last year, Blanchard won by 2 touchdowns on their way to the state championship. But other than that, the recent matchups have been won by an average of 3.5 points over the last 5 years or so. Tuttle hasn't had a competitive game since their opening 7-point win over Guthrie. They've outscored their opponents during that time, 285-39. Crunching the numbers, Blanchard hasn't been as impressive against the same district foes. They have 4-point wins over Newcastle, the non-district, and then over Bethany 3 weeks ago. I really think that Tuttle is loaded up with the transfers like Mark was talking about, and this week it's going to pay off. I'm going to go with Tuttle in this one.
Doug.
Yeah, Tuttle has only given up 63 points. Blanchard's given up 112. I think it's like Tom said, it's going to be a defensive battle. Here's what I know about Coach Ballard. That is one tough coach, and he's a cowboy. He loves to fish and hunt. Man, he can get on a kid and love them at the same time. His wife, Carla, was our head basketball coach at Lincoln. Also, his kids, Dylan and Kinsey, are great kids. And so what I know about Coach Ballard and the fact that his kids are going to play a lot like he presents himself. This series goes back to 1946. Mark talked about it. It is a crazy, crazy series that is one to look at in the state. As far as, just what Tuttle is going to do, it's at home. I think they'll have great success there. Brad won a state championship in 2018. He also was a state champion track coach at Lincoln. I don't know if you guys know that, but the guy can coach whatever it is that he's coaching. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with Tuttle and Coach Ballard.
Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game every year, right? I mean, this is the game everybody looks at. This is the game that's circled on both of these teams' schedules at the start of every season. It's for the district championship. Oftentimes it's a preview of a game that might get played later in the season when it gets colder. Both these teams at 7-0, both these teams top 5 teams, both these teams powerhouses, have very successful seasons thus far. Obviously, home field's a big advantage for Tuttle. If I recall correctly, the last 2 seasons, I think Blanchard went into Tuttle and won in a low scoring game. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but this is a rivalry game, so I think you in some ways throw the records out the door, you throw the rankings out the door, and 2 teams are going to show up Friday night, and the team that plays better and the team that doesn't make mistakes and wins the line of scrimmage is probably going to win the football game. With that said, I got Tuttle a touchdown favorite at home, and but I'm picking Blanchard to pull the upset. I'm going to go against the wave here. I'm going to go out on a limb. Something just tells me Blanchard's going to find a way to win this game in a slugfest, 28-27.
All right, Jacob on an island by himself, taking Blanchard. The rest of the panel has Tuttle Tigers. Let's go to our second game, Skordle game of the week, to be broadcasted. I believe Todd Miller and Adam Dieselhorst are going to be calling this matchup. Turpin dropped its first game of the year to Laverne last week by a score of 42-38. Close game there in 8-man football. The Cardinals traveled to Garber this week to take on the 6-1 Wolverines. Garber's only loss of the year was a 24-20 defeat by Covington Douglas that we talked about on the show a few weeks ago. Should be a really good 8-man matchup this Friday. Turpin at Garber. Tom Nelson, let's start with you.
Well, it's going to be a good one. If I wasn't doing PA for Enid High on Friday night, I would be heading the 14 miles over to Garber to watch that ball game in Warrendale Stadium. B1 is a load. They've got state-ranked Laverne, Turpin, and Garber at the top. Pond Creek Hunter is going to probably slip into that number 4 spot. Adam and I drove by the football field in Turpin last week. We saw the disappointed Cardinals fans leaving after Laverne won that game 42-38. Garber seems to have bounced back from their loss at Covington Douglas, had almost 400 yards of offense last week and beating Pond Creek Hunter 40-6. If Turpin wants to win this district, they've got to win this game and then hope for the tiebreaker scenario. Garber would still have a shot with a loss in a tiebreaker scenario. It's a really tough pick. Garber has a big physical offensive and defensive line. Turpin has a lot of team speed. And I'm going to throw this in. A district coach told me that if Garber throws it less than 10 times, they will win. If they throw it more than 10 times, I'm going to say they could lose. He said they will lose. Interesting. He thinks if they establish the running game and run the ball at him, Garber can win this game. Just because I've seen them, I'm more familiar with them, I'm going to take the Wolverines in this one.
Mark.
Turpin's had a really good run. I mean, that must have been a great game last week with Laverne. Bus trip worries me a little bit. Garber's very, very good. I think, again, just like Tom said, this is up in the air. I'm rolling with the confidence of the OU quarterbacks right now after last week's 7-loss performance. I'm going to go with the home team here, but I think it could go either way.
Mark needs a new offensive coordinator for his picks. Doug, let's go to you.
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually grew up 11 miles from that stadium where I grew up at Hunter. You would have thought it was a whole nother country back in the late 70s, early 80s. 11 miles away. Also lived in Balco, so it was 18 miles from Turpin. That road trip from Turpin to Garber is no joke, guys. On a yellow dog, whatever they're driving, it's 4.5 probably. I also worked for Garfield County, did some mowing. So I've been up and down those right-of-ways a lot. Highway 74. They lost to Covington Douglas. I'm talking about Garber, and that's a battle I know on Highway 74. So with all that said, they've got a cool mascot in the Wolverines. I'm going with Garber.
I drove through Hunter last week, just because I like taking the off the beaten path trail once in a while. And Hunter, I think about the only thing open in Hunter now is the really, really old Coke machine, which I was still lit up right there in the middle, right there at the main 4-way stop there. So, but yeah, Hunter is still there. A lot of wind turbines around there now. But
I can tell you this: December 7th, it'll be 39 years since we won a state championship in football. That was the first one, and so 40, the next year there. But in 86, that town was booming, guys. There was all kinds of things going on there. They had a post office, a grocery store, a couple co-op and an elevator. Man, they had a lot of stuff going on for them. And then once the school moved to Pond Creek, that was kind of the end of Hunter. But I'm still a Hunterite, guys. You probably drove by my house. It was on the main street, and the basketball goal is still standing. And believe it or not, I actually put up the street signs in Hunter as a Boy Scout project back in 1983, and some of them are still standing. So how about that?
Now wasn't Van Shea Ivan quarterback of that Pond Creek Hunter team that won the state championship?
Yeah, quarterback and then point guard and best friends since 1976. That's when I moved. Transfer portal was open in 76, and I went from Oklahoma City to Garfield County.
Head coach Lyle Welsh.
Head coach Lyle Welsh, who actually hired me at Fairview, and I got to get a plug in for Coach Welsh and Mrs. Welsh, Ann, and then of course David Glover and Cindy were so awesome to me when I was at Fairview. David got me the job at Balco that I spent 6 years out there, and so I'm forever grateful to that family. And then Coach Zaire and Mark was there as well, and it was just a great staff. Van Meter,
absolutely great people. We had Coach V on a couple weeks ago to talk about.
Yeah.
So really appreciated having him on. Jacob, let's go to you. Turpin and Garber.
Yeah, you just took me down memory road there with all my coaches from the good old days.
Wasn't that a great staff? I mean, I'm sitting there just in awe because I'm literally sitting in the coach's office, and you got the glove, you got Van Meter, you got Coach Welsh, Zaire, and we're sitting there watching whatever ESPN hard body workout on the beach, and I thought, this is the greatest job in the world. I'm actually having lunch, getting to talk to these guys and have some entertainment on the television. And man, that was a loaded staff back in the day.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah.
To mention something Mark said a minute ago, I know Seth got scapegoated. Last time I checked, the offensive coordinator doesn't prevent 9 sacks. The offensive line is supposed to, but with that said, I get it. I mean, there's no excuse for that. But yeah, nine sacks. Wow. Uh, this is gonna be an awesome game. Uh, Turpin's been on cruise control this season. And then, that game against Laverne last week, to fight Laverne to the end like that in a tight game, that's the kind of game I expect this game to be. Like Mark said, this is literally a coin flip football game. That's why I got it to pick them. Garber at home. But we talked big about Garber. That Garber Covington Douglas game a few weeks ago was one of our games of the week, and we talked all about how Garber, is full of seniors, and that this is the season that these seniors come into their own. And I think this is the game that those seniors' leadership really is going to show through. And so I see Garber pulling out a really close win over Turpin in an excellent football game, 38-36.
Those are our 8 Skordle matchups you can watch for free on Skordle.tv.
So you want to create your future, discover a path worth traveling down, find a career to get excited about. For decades, Career Tech has been training talented, skilled individuals, empowering them to step into a career that fuels not only their life, but the Oklahoma workforce. These individuals are the heartbeat of this state's economy. Individuals just like you. Create your future today at Oklahoma Career Tech.
We're going to quickly discuss 4 of the best non-Skordle Network games that will be played in the state of Oklahoma this week. Can't watch these games on Skordle, but will be great matchups. Mark, let's start with you. Sequoia Claremore at Cassia Hall.
I do want to say one thing. Man, sad news today. Eddie Paul passed away. It was unexpected this morning on Tuesday morning. I'm sorry. One of the great coaches, the great historians of all of high school football. And Eddie coached in about 30 towns. It's not quite that many, but he was a great guy. And so Oklahoma Coaches Association Hall of Famer is going to be missed. Sequoia is 6-1. Cassia Hall is 6-1. The Sequoia loss came to Colcord in Class 2A, and the Cassia Hall loss, it was they beat Holland Hall by 1 and lost a tough decision to another really, really good team there. Carter Nethman, good receiver, bunch of young kids at Cassia that's going to be difficult to deal with coming up in the next couple of years. So I think they're building for Coach Joey Medina there, who's been the coach at Cassia Hall for almost 30 years. Or over 30 years. So I'm going to go with the Commandos here over Sequoia.
Tom.
Rob Gilbreth has been the coach at Sequoia. He took over back in 2018 and lost his first 20 games. He was 0-20. In 2020, during the COVID year, they went 7-2, got it turned around. Hasn't looked back since then, 38-13 after that 0-20 start. They opened up with a 1-point loss to a really good Colcord team, then handed Kansas one of their 2 losses this year. But since then, they've beaten 3 1-win teams and 2 2-win teams. They're going to have to step it up in competition against Cassia Hall. They've beaten up on the same 4 teams in district play that Sequoia did. Cassia Hall's at home. They were the preseason pick to win this district, so I'm going with the Commandos.
Doug.
Sequoia is 1-9 all time against Cassia Hall. Last win came in 2005. Cassia, on the other hand, outscored their opponents 274-63. The combined record, as Tom just said, was 16-26. So that's like a 38% win percentage on the teams that they beat. I will say that Coach Ott is the girls' coach up there, basketball, and he helps coach my daughter's AAU team. And then the great Steve Cooper is also the AD there at Claremore Sequoia. He's battling an aggressive cancer right now, so we're praying for him. With all that said, Cassia Hall is going to win this one.
Jacob.
So in these non-Skordle games, I decided to do something interesting this week. I am only going to use the formula to tell you guys what the line is based on the formula. And just to prove a point that if I were to only put formulas on games, on lines, I would look like an idiot. All right. Now, okay, so let's start with this game. Based on the formula, I'm not going to talk about records. I'm not going to talk about anything else. Cassia Hall, 19.5-point favorite. I personally have the line 15.5 when I apply my adjustments based on looking at the results and the weeks leading up. But obviously at home, Cassia Hall's a big favorite, so I think Cassia Hall is going to win. I don't think they're going to win by 3 touchdowns. I see it be more like a 35-20 type game. So there's my first example.
All right. Muskogee, Sand Springs. Mark.
Great quarterback battle here with Jamarian Ficklin at Muskogee, and Sand Springs has Easton Webb. Sand Springs' schedule was, I don't know what they're trying to do. Bixby and Owasso starting off the season, but since then they've handled all comers, knocking off Bishop Kelly, Bartlesville, Capitol, Ponca, Putnam West. They've got the big rivalry game at the end of the year with Sepulpa, but I think that Sand Springs will host a playoff game this year, but they will not win this one. So I'm going to go with the Roughers over the Sandites.
Tom.
Yeah, Muskogee's been bludgeoning people all year long. They've scored at least 49 points in 6 of their 7 wins. They've pitched shutouts in their last 3 against teams that are combined 1-20. They need some competition to stay sharp, and I think they're going to get it at Sand Springs. Sand Springs one of 4 4-0 teams in this district. Last year, Muskogee won this one 51-13. I don't know if it'd be that bad, but I feel pretty confident about the Roughers.
Doug.
Yeah, this will obviously be Muskogee's toughest competition this year. Man, they've got some star power with Travis Hill as the head coach. But don't forget about Jared Mendenhall, Enid Plainsman. Back in 1985, Tom, they won the state championship with Lydell Carr.
Yep.
I don't know if you were calling Enid games back then, but
I wasn't. That's before. I was a Kansas boy back then, but I was just talking to somebody yesterday about those 80s Enid High teams and Lydell Carr. Lydell got a street named after him here about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, unbelievable. And so Jared would just hand the ball off and Lydell do all the work. But Jared played quarterback at Northeastern. I played at Southwestern. I hit him hard a couple times, but I will tell you this about Jared. He helped me get a job at Union, so I'm forever grateful to Jared Mendenhall. He's done great things at Muskogee. The facilities are second to none, and that's hard to say over here on this side of the state. But he's done great. Jason Parker's also there, played at TU. He's the AD, and so those guys are really doing great things at Muskogee. Of course, Bobby Klink at Sand Springs, defensive-minded coach. Sand Springs has some nice facilities as well, but it's just too much for the Sandites, and I'm going with the Roughers.
Jacob.
Okay, so going straight to the formula, Muskogee 13.5-point favorite. Doesn't that seem a little low, maybe? I mean, looking at what Muskogee's done this season, going on the road at Sand Springs. But the way I see the game, I see it 18.5. And that's based on Muskogee, being about a touchdown on the high side of almost every game they've played this year on the road when I look at the formula. And so that's the way I do see the game. I think Sand Springs is going to give Muskogee a really good football game. And it's too bad we don't have some Muskogee food experts on right now because we've got a couple new cases that we just recently filed over in federal court. That I might be spending awful lot of time in Muskogee over the next year, and I might need some food advice. But anyway, I know one thing: I don't need advice on who to pick on this game, and I'm picking Muskogee to win. And I think they're going to win by 17 points, 38-21.
There's some great barbecue in Muskogee, Highway 62. So you either have to go left to Fort Gibson or back towards Muskogee. I cannot remember the name of it.
Duly noted.
But yes. I'll get you the name.
Big time. Go ahead, Mark.
Is it Malin's? My man Kenny Greer owns Malin's, which is a good place there in Muskogee. So that's I can hook you up with a couple of good places to eat. So
isn't there like an area over there on Tahlequah where it's like Little Italy or something?
Krebs.
That's Krebs.
Krebs.
Yeah.
But that's not too far away, right?
Not too far.
Yeah.
Not bad.
All right, let's go with Big 6A1 matchup. Jinx at Moore. Mark Rogers.
I picked against Jinx last week. That was ridiculous. So that one wasn't a close one that I lost. Both teams are 4-3. There's been a little bit of a difference in competition. Moore's got a good squad this year. They made a nice rally last week against Norman High to make a game close. Came back at 42-35. They're not going to score that many points this week. I like Jinx.
Tom.
More volleyball team though. More girls volleyball could be state champions.
I'll get the food into the mix here today. I have got to say that last week in Hooker, I would be remiss if I did not bring this up. First time this has ever happened to me. We're in the visitors side press box, and we pretty much have the run of the place with the Fairview High School student camera guy up there. And they bring up a full Oklahoma smoked barbecue buffet for us and set it up in pregame. And we just grazed on that thing. 20-minute break at halftime. We just ate and then took some home with us. Oklahoma smoked barbecue. He's got a truck. He's in Hugoton, Kansas one day. He's in Guyman the next. Bouncing all over the panhandle. I recommend him. Terry Ray, his kid Hunter, played in the game last week and went home happy. But I got to throw that out there because, man, Oklahoma smoked barbecue. They'll cater. They got a truck out there in the panhandle. I recommend them. I ate that stuff all day on Friday. So, okay, the game. Moore showed some grit last week, fighting back from a 21-point deficit, losing by a touchdown to Norman. Jinx flexed their muscle. They handled giving Deer Creek their first loss this season, 28-0. That surprised me a lot. Caden Jones scored 3 touchdowns. Moore has never beaten Jinx in 8 games going back to 1996, and the 9th time will not be the charm. I'm taking Jinx.
Doug.
Yeah, Moore won their first 4, then they dropped their last 3. Jinx got off to a rough start. Of course, they're running the gauntlet over here with Owasso, Broken Arrow, and Union. The Dillard boys both played at Lincoln last year. Malachi maybe made the greatest catch you've ever seen a high school kid make last week against Mustang. One-handed right. He caught it with his right hand. Unbelievable, going out of bounds. His brother Caleb is also an outstanding athlete. Both of those kids have been offered D1 scholarships to Florida already. So I'm like you guys. I'm going all Jinx.
Jacob.
All right. So obviously Jinx, just overpowered Deer Creek in that game last week. Jinx really jumped on them. If you watch that game in the first half, Jinx, took the ball, had a long drive to start the game and scored. Mainly just handing the ball to their D1 tailback and getting big yardage when they needed it. Now, I do want to say something. That was a really tough game for Deer Creek going on the road, never having played, an opponent of a caliber of Jinx before, a 6A1. It's their first real 6A1 test for Deer Creek, and they did not have probably their best skill player. Well, definitely their best skill player. Mason Smith didn't play last week, and Grady Adamson's a superstar quarterback. But you take away Randy Moss from the quarterbacks he played for. You take away Jerry Rice from Joe Montana. It took them out of the game. Is my point. Now I'm not saying Mason plays, Deer Creek wins, but Mason plays, and it's a lot better football game. With that said, Jinx really showed me something. And that's what all these Tulsa teams that you just talked about, Doug. That gauntlet: Bixby, Jinx, Union. Broken Arrow, all across the board. The reason the East Side has had so much success, I think, over the last decade compared to the West Side is the boys up front. And I think if you ask anybody right now, why is Owasso the best team in high school football in Oklahoma? It's because their offensive and defensive lines. That's going to be the difference in this game too. Moore has some really talented kids. That quarterback's really talented. He can run around, throw the ball. He's got a lot of people to throw to. Home field advantage isn't going to make a difference. According to the computers, and here's an example. Computers have Jinx a 14-point favorite. I don't see it that way. I got Jinx a 24-point favorite. I got them, and I think they win this game 42-20.
All right.
42-14. Sorry about that. 42-14.
42-14. Our last pick'em game, McAllister at Booker T. Mark, start us off.
These teams haven't played since 2013. McAllister beat Broken Bow, who's just been on fire lately. They have had a really good run in Class 4A, and they held that team to a pretty low score. So it's a good defense at McAllister. Some underclassmen that are playing well for them. Their quarterback, Case in Washington Maisie, has thrown for 1,103 yards, 12 touchdowns against only 2 interceptions. Jordan Clark, really good running back, and Brandon Smith. They've combined for 15 touchdowns, 8 rushing for Clark, 7 receiving for Smith. Booker T's playing better, but I like McAllister.
Tom.
Hey, the 2 4-0 teams at the top of 5A3 hook it up in Tulsa. 2 weeks ago, McAllister hung 70 on the same East Central team that Booker T. Washington struggled to put away by 12 last week. Booker T has a 35-7 win over Shawnee, the only other team in this district that has a winning record. Booker T has won 8 of the last 10 in the series, but they haven't played since like 11 years. It's been a while. I'm going to buck that history and rely on the results of the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to take McAllister on this one.
Doug.
Okay, so Booker T lost to Muskogee and Dell City in non-conference. I am going to Tom just stole my thunder on the 8-2 record for Booker T. I feel like Booker T's got things rolling a little bit. It's at home, and for that reason, I'm going to let Booker T sting the Buffaloes.
Jacob.
According to the computer, Booker T. Washington's a 3-point favorite in this game at home. And you know something? I think the computer's got it right on this one. I think that's about right on this line. I think that, if this game was played at McAllister, it'd probably be -3 McAllister. This is going to be an excellent game, and it's another coin flip game, another toss-up game. It's going to come down to, which team, holds down the stakes, doesn't, give up big plays, and wins the fourth quarter. Because I think this game is going to be close into the fourth quarter. And I'm going to agree with Doug. I think Booker T. Washington has got it going, has got their season moving in the right direction, and I think they're going to squeak out a victory in this game, 30-27.
All right, guys, that is it for our picks. We've had some really great guests on the show so far this year. Doug, you've been right up there as well. Really appreciate you coming on. Standing invitation for you to come back on the show anytime. Really appreciate your insight and picks on these games. Well, hopefully you'll do better than Mark this week because
No way that he won't do better than me. No, Doug will have a really successful record. I wish he'd have picked for me last week.
We're going to give Mark a pass, though. He started off the season like 27-1 or something like that.
Wow.
So, yeah,
unbelievable.
We do theory.
We do that with our we do this with our live stream team, and I'll believe it or not, Coach Stewart, who is our head girls coach, her daughter's a D1 athlete. She's getting offers all over the country. Coach Stewart just dominates. It's her against about 8 men, and she just kills us every year. I don't know where she's getting her information, but she's really, really good at this. But we have a great time with our live stream. And guys, I just want to say thanks for having me on. I'm a Western Oklahoma guy. I got a lot of connections on that side. I think I mentioned that. I got to work for Robert Kramer, Bob Kramer out in the Panhandle at Balco, and I really had a wonderful opportunity to coach with some great guys at Union. Rudy Garcia, Bill Blankenship was in on the hiring of me. I mean, these are just amazing, amazing people. So I've been very blessed to be at 4 great schools, all starting with Fairview, and my memories there are just really, really good. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if we've had anybody on the show this far that had the wealth and the breadth of knowledge about different aspects and areas of high school football like you did, Nelson. I mean, that was impressive. I mean, you're covering a lot of ground there, so tip of the hat to you. That was you made for good entertainment this week.
Mark was a little intimidated by Coach Blankenship. I was a little intimidated by Tom Nelson. So we got the same last name, so we got to be right on the same page, right?
Us Nelsons have to stick together.
Related somewhere, Tom. I don't know.
Full Nelson tonight.
Oh, you might be. Yeah, that's right. We might be.
And
I know my voice isn't as good as yours, Tom. You got a money voice, man.
Skordle will be calling the Tournament of Champions this year, if I recall correctly, December 26th, 27th, 28th. Adam,
Yes.
You can fact check me on that. But apparently Coach Nelson is going to be helping call that tournament for Skordle. So looking forward to having you on the mic as well.
Yeah, good times. Todd Miller, Tom, I think you were gone or sick last year.
I had my knee injury last year.
Oh, knee. Okay.
I'm still dealing with that darn thing, but anyway.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight on the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst. Doug, thank you again for joining us as our guest picker tonight. Be sure to tune into Skordle.tv for the Skordle Network games. You can watch those for free on the app or Skordle.tv. We'll be back next week with new guests and 8 more great games in Week 9 of the Oklahoma High School